Man, well known by the Dallas Police Department.
What were your duties there?
Well, general bar duties such as setting up the liquor, getting the bar ready for the evening trade, waiting tables if he was short-handed. Otherwise, I'd be behind the bar serving the drinks.
Did you ever serve drinks to Dallas police officers?
Oh, yes. In fact, the Dallas police officers were the special boys, shall we say. We even had a private stock for them.
Private stock?
Oh, yes. They wouldn't, bar liquor wasn't for them. We had names such as Hagen Haig or Black Label, the very, very high-priced drinks on the house, of course. You'd never, and that was a gross oversight if you ever charged a Dallas police officer or any official of the city of Dallas or Tarrant County.
Well, other than the Dallas police officers, what officials did frequent Ruby's establishment?
Oh, such as your district attorney, which would be Mr. Wade.
Did you receive any specific instructions from Jack Ruby about serving drinks for the Dallas police officers?
Yes, in fact, Jack told me point blank. He said, Nancy, if you ever, he said intentionally or unintentionally, charge a Dallas police officer, he said, you might as well go look for another job. He said, don't offend them, cater to them, talk with them, even if you ignore the other customers. Bend over backwards to be nice to them.
Did Ruby perform any other favors for the Dallas police officers?
Well, yeah, well, favors, well, if you call them favors, I suppose so. He provided girls, gambling, and booze.
How many Dallas police officers would you estimate Jack Ruby knew on a personal basis?
At least half and probably two-thirds.
There were almost 1,200 police officers in Dallas in 1963. Would you say Ruby knew 600 of them?
Oh, easily.
A great deal has been written about the relationship of the Dallas Police Department with Jack Ruby. We have 1,200 men in our department, and we had each man to submit a report regarding his knowledge or acquaintance with Jack Ruby. Less than 50 men even knew Jack Ruby.
You see, Jack Ruby was a man who wanted to be noticed, wanted to be known. And he used to frequent the Dallas Police Department. And he used to brag, oh, I can get this fixed for you, I can get that fixed for you.
Did the Dallas Police Department or District Attorney's Office ever do any favors for Jack Ruby?
Several that I could probably name, such as serving drinks a little late.
I mean, Ruby was permitted to serve drinks after hours.
He did, and no one ever interfered. And, of course, it was common knowledge that he ran girls and gambling, and I've never seen him any kind of pickup on him.
Did you serve mixed drinks to police officers?
Yes.
Is it against the law in Dallas to serve mixed drinks?
Oh, yes, definitely, except in a private club.
This, of course, was not a private club.
No, open club.
So that every time you served a drink to a police officer, it was a violation of the law?
Yes, and I'd say I probably broke the law a few hundred times in doing so.
And of course, the police were witnesses.
Well, up to a point they were witnesses. After that, I guess they probably didn't care.
Mr. Johnson, when did you first meet Jack Ruby?
I met Jack Ruby in 1952 on Irvis Street, a place called the Silver Spur. I went to work for Jack Ruby in 1956. And the club was a Vegas club. I worked for him for about 6 years.
Did Ruby know many Dallas police officers?
Well, yes, he did. I'd say he knew probably half of the people on the force.
There were about 1,200 police officers on the force.
Yes, well, I'm sure he knew about half of them. And he was very nice to them.
We have 1,200 men in our department, and we had each man to submit a report regarding his knowledge or acquaintance with Jack Ruby. Less than 50 men even knew Jack Ruby, and less than a dozen had ever been in his place of business. Most of these that had been in his place of business had been in there because they were sent there on investigations or had answered a call for police service. I believe there was 4 men in our department that we were able to determine had been there socially, that is, off duty in the presence, and were present in his nightclub.
Did you see police officers drop into the Vegas club during the 6 years you worked there?
Oh, very definitely. They would come in there all the time, off duty, on duty, and so forth. And
How were they treated?
they were treated royally.
You testified before the Warren Commission, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Did they ask you how many police officers Jack Ruby knew?
No, they didn't ask me that question.
I've just read your testimony, and as I recall, they asked you one question about a police officer. They asked you if you knew a policeman named Harry Olson. And you said you didn't remember the name.
That name didn't register with me.
But that was the only question they asked you about policemen.
About policemen, yes. They asked me numerous questions, but nothing about police other than that one that you just named.
We are at the office of Penn Jones, Jr. in Midlothian, Texas, 25 miles from the Dallas courthouse. For the past 2 years, he alone in the Dallas area has conducted an independent investigation into the assassination of President Kennedy.
Well, I love President Kennedy very much. I was one of the few weekly newspapers that covered the Ruby trial. And my actual investigating did not begin until I started reading the Warren report and realized that something was very, very much amiss in reading that report. I really believe that the only way you can believe the Warren report is to not read it.
Have you found it difficult to uncover the facts this time?
Yes, it's very difficult. Witnesses are reluctant. Some of them have gone into hiding, or at least cannot be found by me. And in many cases, the police have actually told, or as some witnesses say, federal authorities have told them not to talk about the assassination. The witnesses are frightened. Some of them went into hiding. I'm sure that I spent at least 1 month searching for Earlene Roberts. And I don't know of any person, any newsman, or any investigator that talked to Earlene Roberts after she testified before the Warren Commission. And her testimony was quite startling.
Mrs. Roberts told Commission counsel of a rather mysterious incident which occurred just after Oswald entered the rooming house on November 22nd. At approximately 1 p.m., she said, a police car drove up to the house at 1026 North Beckley and parked outside. Questioned by Commission counsel, where was it parked? It was parked in front of the house. Did this police car stop directly in front of your house? Yes, it stopped directly in front of my house. Where was Oswald when this happened? In his room. Were there 2 uniformed policemen in the car? Oh, yes. And one of the officers sounded the horn? Just kind of a tit-tit, twice. The commission did not satisfactorily explain why a police car stopped in front of Oswald's dwelling, or why the policeman sounded the horn twice and then drove away just before he came out.
Now, of course, she is dead. And she's not the only one. There are at least 8 persons now dead, either from murder or at least strange deaths, who were closely related to Jack Ruby or Lee Harvey Oswald.
Can you give us one instance of a witness who died a strange death?
Well, let's take the case of Betty Mooney McDonald, one of Jack Ruby's strippers. A fellow named Warren Reynolds saw a man running from the scene of the Tippett slaying. Shortly thereafter, Reynolds was shot through the head. Now, before Reynolds was shot, he could not identify the man running from the scene as Oswald. Then he was shot through the head, and a fellow named Garner was arrested. Then McDonald was the alibi for Garner. She said Garner could not have shot Reynolds because he was with me at the time. 2 days after her alibi, Betty Mooney McDonald was arrested for fighting with a roommate. Although the roommate was not arrested, McDonald was put in jail that night, and an hour later she was found hanged in her cell. And of course the Dallas police said she hung herself.
Did Reynolds finally testify before the commission?
After Reynolds